You're listening to the Love Your Neighbor podcast.
I just want to say welcome. Thanks for joining us on the Links podcast. My name is John, and get the privilege of hosting this conversation where we talk about life in Brandon and really get to know our neighbors. Links stands for Love Your Neighbor. So you can't love somebody if you don't at least know a little bit about them. And so today we have a Brandon resident and neighbor, TJ Barthman. Thank you, TJ, for joining us. And glad you're here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's hard. I mean, don't kid yourself. It's hard to get you. Like you got lots of stuff going on. But tell us a little bit. Tell the folks that are listening a little bit about yourself, your family, kind of who TJ is.
So live in Brandon. I got 3 kids in the Brandon Valley School District. I have 4 kids total. My oldest one is in med school, AT still down in Kirksville. So he's there, and then I got a 7th grader. I got a 5th grader and a 1st grader. So we're staying busy.
Okay. Yes. How? Where did you grow up? You live in Brandon. Where's home? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Northwest Iowa. So I grew up in Orange City, Iowa. Went to school there at Northwestern for a little bit. Went to school in Sheldon at NCC for a little bit, and then came up here and finished at Southeast Tech. Got done with school and just never left. Stayed in Sioux Falls. Was in Sioux Falls quite a while, and then to Brandon.
Well, when you're born in Orange City, I mean, it has to be a very, very compelling reason to leave, I'm sure.
You know, at the time I wanted to leave, and now when you're married with kids, you're thinking Orange City wasn't all that bad. You know, not now you really like it, but you know, I grew up Catholic, and so I actually had to go to a different town to go to church. I went to Alton, which was right by Orange City, but you know, grew up Catholic, married Lutheran, and you know, really found our way to celebrate through the Sioux Falls Celebrate, and then to the Brandon Celebrate.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool story. I would imagine growing up in a community like Orange City. What was that like for you? Not being, because I mean, you probably would know a little bit then of what it feels like to be on the outside of a group.
Yeah.
What was that like?
You know, it was fine. It was good. Very loving community. Very, very good community. The sports were good. The school was good. Had a part-time job at a grocery store there. Probably my most favorite job I ever had. I was working at a grocery store, getting to know the people. So I loved Orange City. I think just there's a lot of in graduation and teenagers as they get done with high school, a lot of them want to leave. Some want to stay. I was one that wanted to just go explore and leave, and I did, and fell in love with Sioux Falls and then in Brandon. But like I said, now you look back on it, you know, there's still some coaches that are still there that played a big role in my life that are still there. And my brothers also had those same coaches, so we reminisce about those coaches. And none of us live in Orange City anymore, but there's definitely some roots there that we'll never forget.
Yeah, there's something powerful about being from somewhere. I grew up in North Dakota, and I'm always, you know, very, very proud North Dakotan. So I get that. Like it's a cool feeling when you are from somewhere and then you go somewhere else and you can kind of make that new community. It's kind of you making it into the image of what you grew up with, you know.
Yeah.
You've done that in Brandon. You talk a little bit about your career, if you can, a little bit about some of the things that you've done in Brandon. Many of the people who listen to this podcast, you know, have just moved to Brandon. Brandon's growing rapidly, but tell us a little bit about your history working in Brandon. And
so when I was in Sioux Falls, I met a guy named Todd Tryon through slow pitch softball, and got to know Todd. Went to work for Todd. He had some gyms, 24-hour fitness gyms, and as I was kind of helping him get his organization up and growing, I decided I wanted to own my own gym. And instead of opening one in Sioux Falls and competing with him, the idea was I would partnership with him on the name, but then I would open my own gym, but I'd do it in Brandon versus Sioux Falls. And I think that was in 2006. I brought Tryon Gym out to Brandon. We were in the Split Rock Square at the time. Was there for 3 years, and then we built a building, which is still there today, called Rapid Fitness. But then we built that building, And then I had that for about 6 years. So overall, we were about 10 years total in the gym business in Brandon. And then I sold that, got involved with a private equity group, and we bought a company, changed the name to Phone and Fix, and that was a used cell phone repair store and sold used cell phones. We franchised that. We grew that and sold that to a larger organization called CPR, which is cell phone repair, and they're still in Sioux Falls today. And got out of that, and I realized I really missed the gym business. It wasn't so much the gym, it was the people business.
Right.
And I missed having all those relationships. I missed having where I could have gym members come through, and maybe I met their children when they were 10, 11, and 12, and all of a sudden they're getting married. And, to see that, I missed it. So got back into more of the Brandon community as a realtor. So I'm a realtor today. So we got into real estate, and I do majority of my business in Brandon, reconnecting with all those gym members, and coach a lot of baseball in Brandon. That helps me with those relationships too. So missed the relationships and had to find that connection again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty special when you can live and work in your community.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to appreciate that about Brandon. Living in Brandon and working in Brandon, serving the community. Well, that's cool. What you're in the real estate business now. You're with Lee Skelling, right?
Yep. We're so Lee and I are Town and Country, and then we hang our license under Hague.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, there's another guy that's certainly been in Brandon for a while.
His nickname is the Hurricane, and there's a reason for that if you know Lee. But that was really a large part. You hear stories about how you treat people will come back. Mm-hmm. And when I first brought the gym out there and we were in Split Rock Square, Lee was my landlord. Mm. And as we got into the Phone and Fix operation, we had stores in North Dakota, we had stores in Watertown, we had stores in Ankeny, Iowa, we had stores everywhere. And it always came back to Lee was always the best landlord I had ever had in all of my operations. And so when I got into real estate, I knew there was one person I wanted to partner with, and it was Lee. And that's how that kind of came full circle,
I see.
Back to Lee. So
cool. Yeah, that you're riding that. So the Phone and Fix. I'm curious about that. Maybe we'll go back in time here a little bit, but I met Todd playing for the Storm.
Yeah, sure.
And I remember the first time that I met him, he was selling exercise equipment out of the back of his car. And that year, he tried to pitch me on Advocare, and I was like, I'm meat and potatoes kind of guy, And then, he obviously got into that business, and then the gym business and the Storm business, and now what he's doing. Talk about riding. I'm assuming that Phone and Fix kind of came, what years was that? Was that?
Oh man, that would have been, let's see, 13, 14, 15, right in there. So when I had the gyms, I was personal training a gentleman, and he had started a private equity firm. And so he was, you kind of get a 1 hour, 4 days a week with somebody. And he had this idea that I should come to work for him. And I kind of had the same idea. And so we partnered up. We bought out a company in Sioux Falls, changed it to Phone and Fix, and then franchised it, grew that model, and then sold it.
Yeah.
And, it's funny you talk about how Todd first approached you. So I was playing slow pitch softball with Todd, and this is how that story goes pretty quick is, now mind you, I was in my low 20s, 22, 23, and I was drinking Red Bull before we'd play softball. And so one day I'm drinking a Red Bull, and Todd throws me a Spark, which was an Advocare product, and he says, try this instead. And so the next morning I tried it. I loved it. Called up Todd, said, hey, how do I get more of this? I didn't really know anything about Advocare other than I liked that product. And so him and I formed our relationship right then and there, and it grew.
Yeah. It's and I think about that model of meeting somebody right where their point of need is. We all drink something, probably something in the morning.
Sure.
Water, coffee, tea, Spark. And being able to add something to somebody and improve their life, and then the cell phone business. Everybody now has a cell phone.
Oh yeah.
Like you and I remember the days when a cell phone was a luxury.
Oh yeah, I remember my dad's first cell phone. I mean, it was a brick. I think, it was this big, and if you made a phone call on it after 10 seconds, he's yelling at you because it's $10 a minute to use it. So that was my first example of a cell phone. But yeah, I mean, now you've got third graders, second graders, fourth graders all have cell phones.
Yeah. Where do you're raising kids? You've raised kids. You are raising kids. Where do you fall as a parent on that topic of technology? How do you guys handle it?
So I'm kind of the old school, and a lot of our kids' parents, our friends' parents, kind of nickname me that. Actually, one of them just the other day called me the grandpa. Because I don't like video games. I don't like the technology. I don't like having their head, in a screen all the time. Yeah. My seventh grader was probably the last one of his friends to get a phone, the last one to get a Xbox. I'm not into it. I don't like it. I did, it's crazy because I do, when I coach baseball at the end of the season, especially in league, we gather around parents as well. Mm-hmm. And we kind of give the end of the year speech, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I always tell these kids, just get a ball in your hands. It doesn't have to always be a baseball. It can be a basketball, it can be a football, it can be a tennis ball, whatever it is, but not a game controller. And the parents thank me for that. Because I think if I can get one or two of those kids to just understand that, that Xbox or that is for maybe when you have friends overnight on a weekend, it's raining, it's snowing, you can't go outside, but it's not a babysitter. It's not something that you can just have on all the time. And so, yeah, I'm more against the technology world than I am for it.
Yeah.
In that aspect. So
you're a people person. You want to be around people, and that's interesting. Well, what do you guys? You've been in Brandon for a while now. You and Natalie. I mean, what is it about Brandon that's kept you here? What is it? What do you see as a value in the community? What's the number? What would you say keeps you and Natalie here? Well,
the school system, for one, is the teachers have been amazing. The community itself's pretty amazing as well. When I opened the gym out there, the amount of relationships I could create and the size the gym became, that's the reason we left Split Rock and built the building, is the gym was growing quickly. Mm-hmm. And the buy-in and from the community for the gym, and all of a sudden we're adding more classes, and we're adding this and we're adding that, and there was just a huge buy-in. And the way that we were welcomed out there in Brandon was amazing. And then after 10 years of the gym business and getting to know so many people, there was no way I could leave. I just have so many good relationships out there now, and I really enjoy it.
What would you say to somebody? Many of the people that tune into this podcast are new to Brandon, maybe within the last 3-4 years. What would you say to somebody who's new, who doesn't have that extensive network of relationships? What would you say to someone that's looking to get involved and develop those? What would you encourage them to do?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it in a lot of different ways. And I guess to me, it's always about how you're going to approach it. So I listened to a lot of mentoring and a lot of leadership, and there's a story I always remember. Is the story goes, there's a husband and wife that moves from Minneapolis, and they moved to Florida. And they retired, they moved to Florida. That was where they always wanted to move. They moved into this small little retirement community. And after just 1 year, they were packing up and leaving. And one of the neighbors had come out and said, I can't believe you're leaving already. Why are you guys leaving? And he says, well, my wife felt like she wasn't welcomed here. The women play cards and do their thing, and they never approached her. And the gentleman looks back at him and said, well, did she ever let them know she wanted to play golf? Did she ever let them know she wanted to be involved in the card club? And he said, no, she didn't. So it's really about where you're going to go with it. Are you going to go and are you going to try to be active? Are you going to try to meet people? Are you going to extend your hand? And I think if you do, it's welcomed in Brandon very well. Yeah. So I mean, if you go to a gym, talk to people, get involved in your church, get involved. There's always organizations looking for volunteers. And if you're in one of those and you outreach your hand in Brandon, it's going to be welcomed.
Yeah. That's good. Good. That's great advice. That's really good. I have come to understand that too in what I do, that it's really about going, I want this, and that want and that desire for community really is what builds a community.
Mm-hmm.
It's we say it this way, that love is a one-way street. You give it unconditionally. You give. A healthy relationship, a healthy community is when we have people that are unconditionally giving to each other without strings attached, and really, really for the betterment of people you give. And that's one of the things I appreciate about your business. We're not trying to plug your business, but I mean, I'm not looking to buy a house, and I'd probably not sell my house. However, when I open the few mailers that I get from you, it's usually something that helps me. There's some tips in there. There's a calendar, with the sports schedule on there. I mean, those kind of things. To me, I appreciate the way you do that, because, gosh, I'm probably not selling. I mean, I'm not selling or buying for quite a while. But to have somebody that I know can help me in that way, but also adding value to me throughout the time. So that's what we hope to do with the Links podcast. I mean, we really want to add value to people. And really give them a chance to know people, that maybe you can't see everybody at the gym.
Yeah. And I think the whole giving, that was really, I do get a lot of people that, even as long as it's been since I've got rid of the gym, still want to talk about the gym days and, how we were wildly successful. And it was because of that. We gave a lot back, not necessarily always in the large scale of the community, but within the gym, we were always adding group fitness classes. We were doing circuit classes. It wasn't about get a membership and thanks for your $35 every month. Right. We were always trying. We did the Brandon breast cancer walk. We did the McCarty boot camps. We did a lot of things that I always believed in the gym business. It wasn't about how many members you could get. It was how many you could keep, the retention side of things. Yeah. And to keep that retention, you had to get them involved. You had to be giving. You had to offer something to them on why they wouldn't leave. Yeah. And so, right back to your point of, what are you giving?
Well, we're celebrating this year. We're celebrating 50 years in Brandon. Brandon's been in this community for 50 years. As we look to the next 50 years, one of the things that you and I have talked about is a wellness center and building a community wellness center. I don't know if you'd want to share anything, but what do you think the impact could be if we could do we have great gyms in Brandon. We have really 3 really good gyms. I mean, that are building community. What is the need that you see for something like a community center with indoor turf, indoor hard courts, with a fitness component, but really a place where all people could come for birthday parties, adult rec stuff. I mean, an indoor space. How do you see that adding value to our community?
Well, I think it would. I think I'm a little biased because I'm a baseball guy, so I'd love to see the turf. Yeah. But my 7th grader plays a lot of basketball, travel, and we're in these, whether it's Harrisburg, whether it's Bartlett, whether it's out at the Pentagon, there's a lot of basketball need to use those indoor basketball courts. I grew up in Orange City where they have the Round Horse Student Center, and that has, all of those. It was a community center. It had a place where you could play pool. You had a place where you could play tennis. You had a place where you could play basketball. You had a weight room. You had a big screen TV you could just hang out at, and it was used a lot. It was used a lot. It was a good safe space that you could bring your kids to, kind of drop them off. We would go there and we'd spend an all day Sunday there. We'd spend a Friday night there, just hanging out. And it was cool. And now they've added on to that thing tremendously through the college. They have a big new indoor turf area, and so forth. But one of those I think would be really cool in Brandon for sure.
Well, we're hoping that we can, the goal is obviously to build. We're building relationships, but one of the ways to build relationships is through spaces, not only through the podcast, but also through a physical space. And the city is a great partner, and I know that baseball and soccer and basketball, those organizations. If we can all come together, I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing. So appreciate you, and appreciate you for tuning in. I would encourage you, if you know TJ, or if you're still listening, which I hope you are, to like and share this podcast. Share it, comment, give us some reviews so that we can keep spreading the word about building community in Brandon. And thank you, TJ, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Love Your Neighbor podcast. The purpose of the Love Your Neighbor podcast is to build community one conversation at a time. You can help us build that community by sharing the podcast on your social media channels and rating our podcast on whatever platform you're listening from. Another way is to let us know of any neighbors who have a story. Go Leaks!